I've never been so excited, yet interested, but also emotionally moved by a watch before. Hello, you're watching James. My name's James, you're watching me, and I am talking about watches, and I'm talking about a watch that is putting tribute to a specific anniversary, the 80th anniversary of the D-Day landings at Normandy. Now, I do get a little bit concerned sometimes when watches or companies try to link a historic event to a product that is then being sold. Because when companies do this, sometimes it can come across a little bit tacky or a little bit of a cash grab. They're just trying to link a story that people feel connected to a product that they can then sell. But this is not a concern I have from this particular brand. Praesidus, this is sort of what their brand is representing. It is sort of revolving around. They are trying to link their watches, and they are successfully linking their watches to people, to events, and to military history. So it did not concern me whatsoever about this particular watch. In fact, it excited me more that this particular brand came out with a watch that looks exactly like this. And I know this because I've looked into this brand before, because I've owned a watch from them before. And the previous A-11 Tom Rice that I owned was a great watch. It was a lovely watch, and I owned it for a really long time and wore it a lot. So when they brought out this A-11 Special Edition Utah Beach, it was the same watch, but elevated for interest factor, for reasons, and well, I'm going to show you in a second why this one is so much different to my original A-11. But at the moment, this one's sold out. There's been two separate runs of this watch, both have sold out, but there's one more final run coming soon in October 2024, which is why I wanted to get this video out now before then. So if you are interested in this watch, it will hopefully be available in October for you to buy. Now, this is not a sponsored video. I've actually bought this watch myself, but I wanted to get this video out before I get back to my full review, which will probably be after the fact that they've all sold out again. So I just wanted this watch out there so you can get a little bit more details about it, see it in a little bit more detail, see some good footage of it, and let me point some stuff out to you. And if you choose to buy one in October, they're going to be listed on the website for $495 US. So for now, I've only had this watch a couple of days, so I'm really just pointing out the things that stand out to me most. So let's flip the camera around and let's do just that. Now, when I first saw this Praesidus and I knew I was able to get one, I did get rather excited. And I got rather excited because I have owned watches from Praesidus before, and the quality of them is absolutely outstanding. I've really enjoyed the ones that I've had. Also like that they're a little bit unique, like that is the warranty card. I like that their packaging is a little bit different as well. It's not the sort of obvious sort of packaging that you would normally get from some other watches, so that makes it a bit of a nicer experience, especially since this one is supposed to be a special edition, and obviously the watch does certainly look like something rather special, and it's nice to have a little bit of extra packaging and things like that. As you can see, this one is the A-11 Utah Sand Edition, and there is the serial number in the back there. But when this watch first arrived, I have to say there were 5 things that really stood out to me. And firstly was something which stood out to me before it actually even arrived, and that is just how unique looking this watch is. I've never seen another watch that looks like this. This is something rather different, and I have to admit I quite like unique things. I like unique watches, but that doesn't translate to a watch that you actually then want to own. Whereas this one, this unique design, not just speaks to me, but it makes me actually want to own it and wear this one. The second thing that stood out to me, and part of that unique design, is the sand that is in there. If you look closely, you'll actually see that is sand, and it does actually move around a little bit. I think it's sort of trapped between a couple of layers, and it does move a tiny bit. It doesn't sort of fall, so it's actually being held quite well, but sometimes you can see through it and you can rearrange it a little bit. And that sand has actually been taken from the beach of Normandy. That is the Normandy coast there, with some beach landings from D-Day, Utah, and the other beach landings there. This one is being collected, apparently the sand from Utah Beach, or at least from the Normandy coast. The third thing that stood out to me is actually how that sand is in there and the overall construction of this watch, because the black section there that has the cutouts of the numbers there, that has the Normandy coastline, is a layer. So it's got like a sandwich dial there, so you can see through it through that sand. That's then on top of a clear layer, which must be a whole disc, which has some printing on it with the additional numbers there. And that clear disc is on top of sand, and that sand is on top of another layer there, which is then trapping that layer of sand between the clear disc and whatever's behind there. So if you actually end up sort of shaking the watch this way, You can probably then see very slightly, let me do it again, you can actually see in behind the sand a little bit. It's actually trapped really well, so it doesn't move much. It's not like an hourglass that sort of shifts down, but it can be moved around a little bit. If you look closely just on that edge there, you can actually see like a golden sort of disc behind it. That must be what the sand is then sitting on top of, but you can clear that off by shaking it. The fourth thing that stood out to me is the size of the watch, and it was something that did also attract me to it and to this style of watch, this sort of A-11 field watch style, because it is a 38mm watch, which I do like that size, especially in this style. Often watches that sort of look like this, well, not look like this, but have this sort of general sort of field watch tend to be a little bit smaller if they're going to be a bit more traditional, but I tend to like this size. It just fits nicely on my wrist. And the fifth thing, as I mentioned in the intro to this, is the story behind this watch. The Utah Beach landing on D-Day. This is very much sort of an American brand, sort of focusing on the American military history, but as an Australian, as having Anzacs from our country here within Australia that fought in the war, that continued to serve in our military, it does resonate with me as well. I do have that thought as an Australian, being patriotic myself, and knowing that the Australians were there on this D-Day landing, as well as Americans, as so many other countries from around the world also had people fight, die, and get wounded on this particular beach landing. And it is nice to have a tribute to those people, to have something that makes me remember those people and sort of links me a little bit to them, with the sand from the beach as well as the story behind it. But as nice as the story is, and the uniqueness of it, and the construction of it, it's actually the on-wrist experience that I'm really chasing, because yes, story's nice, interest factor's nice, but really I'm here just to wear watches, aren't I? And I really like wearing this one. What a cool looking watch. And I quite like how the lugs sort of flatten off a little bit there. It sort of makes this sort of waffle strap that comes with it really integrate into the case quite nicely without it feeling too abrupt. So that's very, very cool. Now, this was just my first impressions of this watch, and I wanted to get this video out before the third and final release of these watches in October 24. If you are interested in one of these watches, that is going to be the last chance you are going to get, unless you can find one secondhand. So I just wanted to get this video out there before then, because you may be interested in this watch. But until we wait for the full review of this one, which may be after the last release of these watches, well, I've got a heap of other videos, and maybe you'd like to watch these two next.